welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is Saturday, and it is our Business and Economic Forum that we call FOL Marketplace. This is where we talk issue of economics and business, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this broadcast. I am Anthony Sie, hosting along with Mr. William Kane. Thank you for joining us, folks. In today's edition of FOL Marketplace, we are discussing the CBL performance. I'm talking about the Central Bank of Liberia. How is the Central Bank of Liberia doing? And we want to rate the central bank's performance. Central banks, my understanding, is a key component or institution that handles the economy of our country. I have two gentlemen here. William King is a business guy, and we have also Mr. Ware. Mr. Ware is here, and he is an economics guy, and we want to look into the Central Bank of Liberia. So you are gladly welcome. Folks in cyberspace, hit that share button for us. Help us to share the show so that you can also be part of this conversation about business and economics. This time around, talking about the performance of the Central Bank of Liberia. Without much ado, I will now turn it over to my man William Bernard King, who will take it from there. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Sierra. Once again, to our listeners and viewers that are tuning in, we want to say thank you for joining us on the FOL Marketplace, where we look at all things Liberia business side, and we try to, keep it real factual, keep it real, and we try to break it down in a way that we can all understand. So it's going to be a good topic today. We're going to talk about central bank of Liberia. How has the performance been since the new administration took place? There's been a lot going on, a lot of stuff happening in our uh, economy and in the world. So we're going to break down and see how central bank is doing. And so just want to thank you, and I'm going to pass it on to our fellow panelist who's going to be joining us, Thomas Red. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. King. My name is Thomas Bassere. I grew up in New Crew Town, and I went to school in Plebo, Maryland County. I also went to school in Monrovia and Ghana. I previously served the Central Bank of Liberia as a Treasury Operations Analyst. And from there, I was transferred. That was a promotion to the research department, where I became head of the real sector unit of the Central Bank of Liberia. And because of the value of my performance, the strength of what I was able to do, and the independent steps I took to ensure that the real sector was meeting its challenges in terms of deadlines and producing quality output, the bank saw the need and seconded me to the West African Monetary Institute in Accra, Ghana, also the place where I went to school. While there, I served my country perfectly. In terms of what I did, besides all of that, all economists were expected to write papers. And that was a key milestone I left with the West African Monetary Institute. At the end of my 2 year secondment, I returned to the Central Bank of Liberia, but didn't see the space to continue with the Central Bank of Liberia at that time. And so I had to move to the United States, where my wife and children are based. And I'm presently in the United States, specifically in Texas. I am a Health and Human Services data collector with the state of Texas. Thank you, Mr. King. For those of us who are out in Liberia and other parts of the world, I say to all of you, you are most welcome. We may not have the monopoly of ideas to see what we do, but from the conversation we have, we can move our country to an ideal place, or perhaps where we expect it to be. It may not be now, over time we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Red. Thank you very much, Anthony. As we, get started, we go to our this cleaner, and I'll say that real fast so we can move on. We have a lot to cover. The content is for informational purpose only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained on our media or written documents constitute a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by FOL or any third-party service provider to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments in this or in any other jurisdiction in which such media material may be shared. All content on the site is information of general nature and does not address the circumstances of any particular individual entity. Nothing in the media constitutes professional or financial advice, nor does any information on the platform constitute a comprehensive or complete statement of the matters discussed or the law relating thereto. Thank you, gentlemen. That's our disclaimer. We always say, the information we have here is our personal opinion. And before making any investment decision, please consult your licensed financial advisor before making those decisions. Thank you, Anthony. Back to you. Tell us.
All right, William Bernard King there, reading our disclaimer, trying to tell you that what we do here is about bringing experts for them to share with you their experiences, and those experiences are not to tell you what exactly to do, or if you are a business person deciding on what to do. All right, on that note, we will get the show started here. Again, we just want to remind you, Mr. Ware is our guest. He has been, around the central bank for a good length of time, and he is an economist. And we are rating today the Central Bank of Liberia. To get started, Mr. Ware, I will start with the basic. Sometimes we assume that everybody knows what the central bank is all about. For the sake of my listening audience, the Central Bank of Liberia, what is that institution and what are just few of its core responsibility to the people of Liberia and the government?
Thank you, Anthony. The Central Bank of Liberia was established as an act of the legislature in 1999. Before that, we had the National Bank of Liberia, which did not have the full independence to do what a central bank does. So, in the wisdom of the legislature, they had to review the act, and that's how, in 1999, the act was reviewed, and today we have the Central Bank Act of 1999, which gives the Central Bank of Liberia that independence that all other central banks around the world have, so that the implementation of monetary policy can be fully within its grasp. Now, the Central Bank of Liberia has core responsibilities. For example, maintain price stability, promote growth in the Liberian economy, ensure that everyone has access to finance, reserve accretion, which means the Central Bank of Liberia also have the responsibility to build the reserves of our country. And above it all, the Central Bank of Liberia has a responsibility to ensure that it has a visible presence throughout the length and breadth of our country. This the Central Bank has been doing, this it is doing, and it is our hope that over time, it may not be an ideal situation, but the central bank will be able to meet all of its challenges. It also has a responsibility to ensure that the purchasing power of the Liberian dollar is competitive. Briefly, that's how we can go with it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Anthony Gordon, I think I saw you having another follow-up question for him, or do you want me to kind of jump in here?
Yeah, before you can come in, he listed specifically the roles of the Central Bank of Liberia, and those are the statutory responsibility. If I can use my non-professional language yet, but what I want to get from Mr. Thomas Rare is whether or not the central bank as an institution has been up to those responsibilities. If he were to give it a grade, I know it's a difficult thing to tell me now, oh, central bank is performing at 80%, you might get in Bible with somebody, but I mean, it's just for us to understand in terms of performance, maybe comparing our bank with other banks in a sub-region.
Well, thank you, Anthony. In terms of the central bank meeting up with its challenges, it is not only looking at the central bank, because if you only look at the central bank, you're going to convict the central bank very wrongly. You must look at the central bank in terms of the environment in which it finds itself and all of the actors who are also there. The central bank is not independent of the economic system in our country. Commerce Ministry is there, Finance Ministry is there, the Executive Mansion is there. So in the midst of all of this, I wouldn't say, given a scale of 1 to 10, I wouldn't say the central, with 10 being the highest, I wouldn't say the central bank is 10. But I can tell you that the central bank should be between 8 and 9. And I say this because in the Republic of Liberia, no other institution has personnel than the central bank. No other. And given the quality of its personnel, the vibrancy of its leadership, the central bank is actually up to its task. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, yes, the central bank should be between 8 and 9. It should be between 8 and 9 because the policy making environment is not only unique, it's not specifically a function of the central bank. The central bank has domestic partners. And on the basis of that, it must also work with all of those who are involved. And because it is working with everybody, the central bank cannot take all of the 100% because they themselves have to make their own contribution to what the bank does. So on that scale, the central bank is meeting its challenges as is required, as is expected from the Central Bank Act of 1999. Thank you, Anthony.
Mr. King, go. I see you laughing there. I will come back.
You will come back.
Of course, of course. You want me to say something now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so before I give my rating on central bank performance and everything, what I'd like to do is, for the purpose of this show, I want to take us through a timeline of the Central Bank of Liberia, from the time of President Weah came into office. So let me just say this. It has been very, very turbulent for our Central Bank of Liberia, and I'll go through a list of items, and you're just going to scratch your head to say how is it that the building is still standing right now? Let me go through a list of items. So beginning 2018, right? Transition to the new government.
Mhm.
Then, as soon as that happened, there was the NGO money being released to the government of Liberia without the NGO permission. Then next was the draw on reserve through the central bank by government of Liberia, without any kind of check and balance. And then there was the issue of the missing container of the $16 billion. So central bank at first claimed no money was missing. Then it went to some of the money was not accounted for, and then it was the money was printed without proper authorization. Those were claims. Then came the arrest of Sirleaf and Weeks, and then also the investigation was launched. And then after that, there was the business and economic dialogue. So that was 2019, and we continued 2019. After the business economic dialogue, Governor Paltry transitioned to the new central bank governor. So for about 2 months, there wasn't really any focus on moving things forward, but on a transition. Then central bank introduced the 30% treasury bill, because we had heavy inflation and there was a lack of money in the system. Then Liberia experienced a currency depreciation rapidly against the US dollar, 30% inflated. Then Liberians became gripped with fear, and as the money supply got tight and not enough Liberian currency to go around, there was a rush to the bank, and banks then could only give a portion of what the customers was requesting. And then the queues at the bank got larger, and there was more time to retrieve money. In certain instances, you could be at the bank between 3 hours to 4 hours. So we're going through these timelines. So 2019, Christmas, Liberia experienced a shortage of cash. Now remember, central bank introduced that 30% treasury bill to encourage more folks to go to the bank and deposit. Now that investment that increased by fourfold, but it was still not significant. To give you an example, Anthony, where the rubber hits the road for a lot of folks in investments. So 3 years ago, the Liberian currency was 90 Liberian dollars to one US dollar. So you could go anywhere and you can have $1, you get 90 Liberian dollars. Well, that was 3 years ago. As we fast forward to 2019, something very crazy and very scary happened. In January 2019, we found ourselves at 160 January 2019. And then by October, we found ourselves at $211. So basically, let me tell you this. If that 30% treasury note, if you put $1,000 in the bank, US dollar, and after 12 months you went there and you said, oh, I think I'm going to get a 30%, I'm going to get $1,300. Well, you are going to be shocked because you are going to probably get between 980 bucks to $120, to $1,020. So central bank had the challenge with inflation. Now, recently, something interesting is that Sirleaf was acquitted, and the verdict is going to be coming up in the next week or two. Now, over 90% of the government of Liberia budget, so about 450 million roughly, is in salary and human resource allowances to support those resources to move around. So that means that there's no money for capital development. So central bank challenge of cash still exists and productivity is nearly non-existent. Central bank finds itself again in a tight spot of managing NGO money and money operations with meager ability to implement its strategies that were talked about at the Business and Economic Forum. Now, to be sure, central bank in itself not bear all the blame, as Mr. Thomas also stated, as it is part of a bigger fabric of a government of Liberia that finds itself in an economic quagmire and lack consumer trust at all. And also the consumer distrust was ignited and kindled by government of Liberia continuous faux pas and dig hole, cover hole, and douse the fire for a burning 12-story building with man passing bucket of water to each other. Where's the fire hose in the truck that central bank needs? Of course, we don't give them excuses, but I will say this: for the effort that central bank is still standing, I give them a strong A+ for the effort in this environment. However, in terms of their independence, in terms of their leadership, the competencies, the trust, the report consistencies, and delivering reports and so forth, I have to give them a C minus. That's not to say that they can't get better, but this is just the midterm, and there
All
are
right.
so many. Thank you, Anthony.
All right. Well, then you threw a lot of things at Mr. Red. Let me get Mr. Red to respond. This time, Mr. Red, let go piece by piece. And I know you came prepared, so you have a leverage to
No,
tell
no, no,
me.
Anthony,
Let me
no,
talk
put us
about
on
this.
the spot.
No, I'm
Go ahead,
talking to
Anthony.
Mr. Red. Mr. Red, I know you came prepared, and we want you to be part of the conversation as much as possible. If there's anything you want us to go to discuss, bring it, and then we would ask you questions. You talk about central bank is one of the best institutions in terms of personnel. So we have qualified people then. So one will expect that in terms of you know productivity, the central bank will be up to the task. But if we look at the inflation rate, first of all, I know you said the central bank is just part of the entire economy, but someone might think that they are in control of that. You think they're doing a better job on inflation?
Thank you, Anthony. The central bank's performance when it comes to inflation is not perfect, it's not ideal, meaning that it is mixed. If you look at what Liberians Liberians expect inflation, for example, in single digit, but inflation is not in single digit. Inflation is somewhere around 27.3, 27.3, or 25.8 end of period. Yes, the central bank may not be doing it, it's not performing well when it comes to the issue of inflation. Now, but what informs inflation? Inflation is informed by so many factors. For example, to mitigate the effect of inflation on the Liberian economy, the central bank conducts the foreign exchange auction. This auction allows businesses to access foreign exchange from the auction and do the importation of goods and services and the importation of goods that the Liberian people desire. But what is happening is that our import, our import bill is higher than our ability to finance import. Meaning that, for example, if you look at the ECOWAS or WAM's requirement, we should have reserve to finance 3 months of import. But that is not happening. As I talk to you, we are only able to finance import for 2 months, 2.5 months. So it means technically the Central Bank of Liberia is not meeting this particular requirement. But meeting this requirement also means the central bank must have the leverage to see that the economy is at a point where we are producing what we so desire. Take, for example, output, economic output over the years have been declining. If our output is declining, it is not the sole responsibility of the central bank, because one, you will have to include the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Finance. How are Liberian farmers faring? What is the productive sector of our economy? If our productive sector is low, then it means our ability to build reserve from the point of the central bank may be a bit challenging. Besides that, if it is a bit challenging, the central bank becomes unable, not totally unable, because the auction is still ongoing, but it cannot be the full requirement in terms of what is needed to finance
Mr.
the
Rare.
importation of goods and services. Now, I'm sorry, let me just drive a little bit.
Okay.
Let me just drive a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So what it means is that it's a major constraint for the Central Bank of Liberia that we can finance importation through auction. We will expect that the Ministry of Agriculture and other entities will increase economic output, especially that which we import, so that we make some savings and reduce that which is spent on the importation of goods and services, which require foreign exchange. Because the Liberian dollar is not performing well, it is under pressure. And it is this pressure which translates into inflation as we have it today.
Thank you. And the question I wanted to ask you is that you said the Central Bank of Liberia should be able to finance at least 3 months of importation in the country. But the way things are, it cannot go to that 3 month or can't finance that 3 months importation. And you also explained that there are other factors responsible. Does the central bank share any of those factors in any way, or it's just that the economic players in the market are not doing well enough, and that's why the central bank is falling short on that benchmark?
Anthony, if you check,
Hmm.
the central bank is actually reporting what happens in the economy.
Okay.
The central bank is actually reporting what happens in the economy.
Hmm.
And if the central bank is reporting what happens in the economy, it cannot be the one to be challenged. chastised.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said the environment. Some of the indicators we are looking at are cross-cutting. And because those indicators are cross-cutting, it does not prevent the central bank from reporting. For example, output. I keep saying this because it is output that got us where we are. For example, output. Then we'll go to the next stage. And as I was going through the Central Bank of Liberia report,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that spending, for example, government spending, is in excess of government revenue. That's additional pressure
Mm-hmm.
on whatever is available in terms of Liberian dollar. If this is the situation, then I said because it is cross-cutting, the central bank doesn't have control, that much control, meaning that government of Liberia should also be in a direction to ensure that what is generated as revenue from taxation is
Mm-hmm.
also equivalent to our spending. But if we are spending more, then we put additional pressure on the already stranded economy.
And so, Mr. Rel, what can the central bank do to minimize this pressure? Can, for example, the central bank decide to put out some money in terms of production, be it agriculture or other manufacturing areas, or maybe to increase economic activities in the country and thereby leading to maybe growing the economic envelope of the country and then reducing the pressure on the central bank, or the central bank does not have that power to do so?
Now, for me, the central bank has the power, that's part of its responsibility to ensure growth in the Liberian of the central bank's responsibility to ensure growth in the Liberian economy. What it means is that given what is available at the central bank, the bank should ensure that various businesses, whether it's agriculture, carpentry, all of that, they have access to finance. And the access to finance should empower them to go more into their various businesses. I gave you an example. At one point in time, there was a various stimulus package, stimulus initiatives for businesses in the Liberian economy. Carpenters, people in agriculture, smallholders, they were all accessing finance to, to ensure that their businesses were growing. If you go to the Afriland First Bank, that placement was made for agriculture. The other banks had it for the carpenters and all of that. So everybody had access to capital at some point in time with some limitation. But what really happened that we are not at the level at which we should be given this level of investment because people in agriculture, smallholders, carpenters, they were all accessing finance. Now, if they didn't perform to that level, I remember in one time in one of our meetings, their payment period was extended. They said they couldn't make payment at a particular point in time. Maybe patronage was low. For example, we also said that whatever is produced, government of Liberia will ensure that you have patrons, you have people to buy. At one point in time, I worked with the carpenters, and what they produce, I went on the freeway. I met all of them. Said, this is what we have produced. But the government earlier promised us that they will buy. And because government is not buying and they were producing items for school and all of that, and because they were not buying, everything remained there. If you don't have patrons to do what to patronize, if you don't have anybody to patronize you, what it means is that obviously you're not going to pay. And if you're not going to pay, you also not going to increase production. You also not going to be producing. So it's a whole quagmire of something that we all have to look at. The Central Bank of Liberia, given its responsibility, made available financing to all of these entities I'm talking about. So what happened?
Thank
What
you.
happened? What happened cannot be the sole responsibility of the central bank. Nobody was buying from them, for example. So do you hold
No,
the central bank?
well,
Please go ahead.
let's go a little back and forth here, right? So,
Welcome.
something that I think we need to really address is consumer and investor confidence, and also that I think central bank they fail to hold the whip, they fail to hold the reins at a very critical time. And let me tell you what I mean. Um, government of Liberia at some point in time, they were pressed for cash, and the cash that they were pressed for was money to support resources, to support resources and pay salaries and various things. Now, if central bank in this position, what happened is that they did not look at the capital development, the capital money for capital development, and so it was moved into the salary space. And so what happened is that you have a huge lack of productivity. Now we are expecting, or we're looking at our central bank and saying, hey, you cannot lean in, or you cannot give into the demands of government of Liberia right now, because giving into those demands will have serious implications on our currency fluctuation. And I think that also added something else, which was the $16 billion currency thing. And so in the region, Ghana was experiencing maybe a 10% inflation of its currency. And when I look at the data in 2018, 2019, we were okay at a very slow pace. We wanted to get better, but we were at 116 Liberian dollars. But once this thing came out where there was the money going from UN account, once it came out that the reserves were kind of being used, that right there eroded the trust. And I think that in that space, although we have very knowledgeable folks at the bank, but please, if you can, share some insight in our Liberian culture. Why is it difficult sometimes to crack the whip? Because that has serious repercussions. If I put my money in at 160, and then next thing you know, I'm down to 200 LD, that's going to impact my confidence as far as putting more money into the central bank so that they can lend and do investments and so forth. So I'm sure central bank knew that, but what was the constraints, or what is the relationship between the government and central bank, to where sometimes in our culture it's difficult to say yes or no, even though you know what should be done?
Mr. King, thank you.
Yeah.
This brings us to the point of the supremacy of political decisions. I'm telling you, political decisions are supreme to economic decisions. We are technicians. We review the data, we make the policy recommendations. And it is left with the politicians, those in policy making positions, to go ahead with the implementation. Now, I'll tell you one thing. There is nobody at the Central Bank of Liberia who was elected. All those at the Central Bank of Liberia were appointed by those who were elected. And remember, even though we say there's a tenure service, every position has a tenure, but the politician may decide to change. And because of that, it serves as a constraint. Let's be very practical about it. It serves as a constraint on the Central Bank of Liberia. When it comes to the Central Bank of Liberia giving credit to the government, it has a limit. It has a limit. And that limit has to be followed by the central bank. But if the political decision maker says, central bank, this is what we require, this is what we should do. If the central bank does not do it, you know what happens to the central bank the next day? The entire leadership may go away because of the supremacy of political decisions. Now, let's come to it. The central bank has all the instruments it takes internally to ensure that everything works perfectly. For example, when it comes to checks and balance, you will see it in practice at the Central Bank of Liberia. The bank also has a risk department which advises everybody on what we should do and what we should not do. So if everything is in place, then the question is, why are we still faced with these challenges? And I repeat, the environment is not only unique to the central bank, there are multiple actors. And the policy-making environment may be a little bit messy for the Central Bank of Liberia. But you cannot deny the fact that the bank is able to do what it does. Independent of political decisions, the bank is a perfect place to deliver.
So So, Anthony, please. Sorry, we have some comments from our listeners, but Anthony, please go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, brother. Go ahead. Let me mute mine. Hold on.
You build. Yeah, I'm listening to you, Anthony.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Mr. Rare, while
Okay.
you fix that, let me read some comments from our Facebook. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, so I have a question from Miss Musu Wongolos too, as she says, "Is the Central Bank of Liberia an autonomous entity? What influence?" Hold on one second, okay, Thomas. Uh, sorry, 1 second. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Can you hear me, Thomas? Can you hear
Yeah, I'm
me?
hearing you now.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm hearing you now.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. All right. As Anthony fixes that, let me ask that. Yeah, this said is central bank an autonomous agency. Can you comment on that, please? So yeah,
By
go
the
ahead.
cent-
Go ahead, Thomas.
uh, uh, uh,
Oh, okay. You
yeah, by
cannot.
the Central Bank Act of nine.
I can hear you. Keep
Am I
talking.
hearing you?
Yeah.
Am I hearing you?
Okay. Okay.
Okay. By the Central Bank Act of 1999, which is always a reference. The Central Bank Act of 1999 makes the Central Bank of Liberia an independent entity. That is why, because of its independence, the central bank is not the central bank does not depend on government to run the bank. It depends on its own resources. And when it comes to its independence, the bank is expected to make decisions that are independent of political influence, that are aimed, that target to address various macroeconomic challenges. For example, exchange rate, building reserve, building the capacity of the brand that will be competitive. These are all within the ambit of the Central Bank of Liberia. These are all under the these are all required of the Central Bank of Liberia. And to say that the bank is not delivering, no. The effort continues to be made from time to time. If you look at the central bank, it publishes everything. There is nothing at the central bank that is hidden. So all of us have access to what is done at the central bank. And because all of us have access to the central bank data and all of that, independently other people make their analysis. But the central bank keeps delivering. Now listen, Mr. King, for me, I am a technician. I'm an economist. I am not a moral scientist to say what they did was wrong, what they did was right. No. All I do, as all all of us economists, we analyze the data and we make the appropriate recommendations to the government. Now, you talk about another thing. You talk about, for example, Anthony talk about missing 16 billion. As economists, yes, our duty is to advise. But are you saying that because at the point where we are, there is nothing that is missing? At the point where we are, the central bank did not misappropriate anything. Nothing is missing from this 16 billion. When it comes to the 25 million, I read all of the reports, and a final decision from the bank or the government of Liberia is still pending. So, in the absence of a decision, why is it still pending? Do we convict all of these people? If these people actually have problem, Mr. Salim would not be where he is. The rest of them would not be where they are. I am thinking that maybe people were very emotional in approaching what happened at the bank. Until after a little time, when they came to their actual judgment, say, let's do a proper investigation. It is this proper investigation that leads Mr. Sally, Mr. Wills, and others to be where they are today. The question is, we should stop being emotional. We should use our judgment for the best of others, including
Now,
ourselves.
If I can
now,
jump in here, William, I think my son issue has been resolved. Hold on, let me jump in here.
thank you.
Mr. Ray is talking about emotional,
Yeah.
Yeah,
aspect of it yet. When you say emotion, what are you talking about? So on the $25 million, right? There was a report, and some people are interpreting it so many ways. Those who are critical on the government say that, hey, there are so many uh, frauds in this particular report. I read a report. There are instances they talk about a business that was giving X amount of money, and that business can be found anywhere, and that was done by the central bank. There were other businesses, they said they gave X amount of dollars just to realize that they inflated the amount. In other words, they said they gave their bank, the business $1,000 just to find out from the report they actually gave that particular business $2,000. All of these things are read within the report. And the final report supposed to come from the LACC. Since the president sent it, it has not come. But the point I'm making here is that these are central bank officials who presided over an exercise that was intended to map out excess liquidity to balance the exchange rate. And this is what they did, clear in a report. Should we trust these central bank officials? Because the reason I'm asking the question is even the leaders within the central banks are saying that those were honor men who carry on those acts. So why you can't hold those honor men accountable within your own ranks and file?
Thank you, Anthony. Thomas, please, as you hold on one second, Thomas, as you put your thoughts together to answer that question, I would just say that to all our listeners, focus on Liberia. We see your comments. We had a little technical sound thing, but we see a lot of your questions, and Anthony will be reading those questions after Thomas Red answered this next question that he was posed. So please, thank you for your patience. To Musu, Masini, and Aliu, please just sit tight, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Ray.
yeah, King. Leadership requires taking responsibility, and if you take a duty or some responsibility and give it to an underman, it is your responsibility to ensure that the reports he presents to you is reviewed and perhaps updated or corrected. Now, in terms of trusting the Central Bank of Liberia, I can tell you one thing clear. Anybody who does not trust the Central Bank of Liberia has nothing in Liberia to ever trust. Has nothing in Liberia to ever trust. I say this because I work for the Central Bank of Liberia. The level of caution, the level of checks and balances, the risk assessment, everything is documented. So why would we not follow it? Everything is followed. But when it comes to the 16 billion, 25 million, he said the people want myself, I read a report, the Crow report, all the reports, I read them. What Anthony said is true, that some entities that received money were called, they couldn't answer their phones, some didn't even exist. That happened, yes. But is it enough to say that the central bank did not do a job? The act, from what I did, And from what others did, some people say about 7 billion could not be accounted for. Let's agree about 7 billion could not be accounted for. But has everything been concluded? Has everything been concluded? It is the 16 billion that has been concluded. Until we see what finally rests with the 25 billion, we can say that the central bank is not up to it, because the central bank personnel went on the field, did their report, and everything came out fine. And they brought their reports to their various principals. They carried their report back to the governor. They all saw those reports. What did they do with the report? In the absence of any report being commissioned, it was the responsibility of the leadership of the bank to ensure that these reports from our personnel is reviewed. If that had happened earlier, then we would not be where we are. So for me personally, you can't call the central bank. There are entities, there are some of us who will not do well when given some assignment. But generally, the central bank is up to it because it went on the field, it met all of those people, it gave the bump-up was done by the central bank personnel. They did their job. They made their reports. So what happened? If I am on the field doing my work and maybe my principal went behind me to do some transaction that I don't know about, it could possibly be the case. It could possibly be the case. But the central bank personnel is perfect. When it comes to morality, I kept saying it. You will find it at the central bank. Risk assessment, they advise you. So what went wrong when it comes to the bopping? I wouldn't want anybody to believe that it is a central bank. Bring everybody to book. You keep talking about the central bank, but when you leave the finance ministry, the technical economic management team, King, I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing you.
No,
Everybody should be held accountable.
I'm saying keep going. What I'm saying, Mr. Rent, hold those thoughts. Let's see what some of our commentators are saying. Anthony, should I read or do you want?
You read some comments.
Okay, thank you very much. I have from Musu Wangolistu says, but the government uses its political influence to sabotage the autonomy of the bank. Isn't that so? Someone else says, how is it independent but politicians appoint its leader? I think you addressed those two. You addressed those two already. The other one is, why doesn't the LBC have an independent board? I'm not sure what the LBC is, maybe the main central bank. Am I mishearing or misunderstanding?
Yeah, I think they meant the CBL.
Yeah. And then Eva said, really, I think that was to your comments you were making. And is that your personal opinion or that of the central bank? Then Musu say, is the guest authorized to speak on these central bank issues, or is he invited to share his own opinion? I think Thomas has said that, the things he's saying, and our disclaimer has said that these are our own opinions, that this is not a representative from the central bank. Thank you, Musu. Rephrasing my question, does a CBL have a board of directors to appoint capable leaders? So those are some of our comments. Thomas, for the last one, CBL have a board of directors to appoint capable leaders to Thomas. Does the Central Bank of Liberia have a board of directors to appoint capable leaders? But I think he mentioned that the governor is appointed by the president, and of course, as the governor, you're automatically if I'm not mistaken, you become the chairman of the board of directors for the central bank board. Is that correct, Thomas?
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah. All the members of the board of governors of the central bank are appointed by the president, and the executive governor of the central bank is the chairman of the board.
Okay, now, how do we get to this? And I think I want to stress this just a little bit. As I mentioned before, Central Bank of Liberia, they work best in an autonomous environment and when they're left to do their job the best way possible. And what happened in the first 18, 19 months, as you can see, because of desperate situations and because of lack of good sound thought, it looks as if the central bank has been thrown into a space that it really shouldn't be thrown into, and that was caused by a lot of withdrawal of money and money being going towards the government of Liberia. Now that put them in the media, and it's never a good thing for the money people to be in the media, Anthony. That one I can tell you. They avoid it. They want to stick to a very boring. They don't want to get into the political stuff.
Yeah, thank
Now,
you, William.
let me just land.
Mm-hmm.
So, this distraction in the money world, this has been a distraction. A lot of things that we mentioned has been a distraction. And consumers, people like you and me, Anthony, whenever we get to the point where our trust with people that has our money, or we see our money value going down, it's not a good thing. And the place where it's been reflected is in the level of investment in Liberia, and also the exchange rate has been impacted severely by that. So this distraction, Thomas, how does the central bank climb out of this hole? Because it's very bad now. Consumer, we're still here. We haven't completely just lost all trust. If we did, it would be 400 to 500 to $1. So tell me, where does the central bank go from here? Can they begin to rebuild? What does it look like?
Well, in the first place, the central bank is still able, from time to time, the central bank has been able to do its job. In terms of consumer confidence and like that, and sort like that, you will see that from time to time, the bank has been evolving or developing instruments that the public continue to participate in. Even though we say they may not be, the bank may not be doing its best, but in terms of its other products, the public is participating. For example, the foreign exchange auction. Everybody continues to go to the foreign exchange auction. And those who don't go to the foreign exchange auction, they also have a way of participating. Maybe they participate through those who are qualified to attend the foreign exchange auction. You have the CBL securities. You have the CBL securities. For example, the treasury bills are being offered by the Central Bank of Liberia. The public keeps participating. Treasury bills are being offered by the Central Bank of Liberia, and the public keeps participating. You also have the T-bills, T-bonds. Everybody is participating. Which the treasury bills and the treasury bonds, they provide short-term financing for government. What it means by the public's participation, listen, by the public's participation, it means the public still has confidence in the system.
Okay, Anthony, do you,
Mr. Ryan, why if some of these people who are participating, you are assuming that it's because they have some trust? Why if they just don't have any option, and that's why they have to be? Because there is one central bank of Liberia, and if a bank, a commercial bank, is doing business in Liberia, I mean, they have no other way to go other than the Central Bank of Liberia. Let's say an importer, and maybe they need foreign currency and they have to go out to import. They have no other place to go other than the central bank. Maybe they went to the commercial bank. The commercial bank is saying, "No, I have nowhere. I don't have money," so they have to go to the central bank. To think that because some people are still doing business with the central bank, it means that, or it justified in totality that the central bank is doing an outstanding job. I would think that it's not entirely true. What's your response?
The reason why I think the way I think is because the rate, for example, if they go for the auction, if the auction rate is so high, they have an option to go somewhere else. If the auction rate is so high, they have an option to go somewhere else to get it at a lower rate. For example, they will go to commercial banks, but everybody is observing, for example, it is a common price. And because it is the price across the board, so everybody goes for it. It's not an issue of you don't have an option. No, it is this particular product being made available at this price. And if you look at the price of this product, it appears reasonable. And because it is reasonable, I will participate. Now, if you participate in the auction and you are given your package, what it means is that you have the opportunity to, for example, import or on lend to others. You have the opportunity to import or on lend to others, which means that you continue to be in business.
Mr. Red.
So the auction, yes, sir. The auction is not intended for you because you don't have an option. No, the auction is intended for your participation at the prevailing rate.
Mr. Red, earlier you mustered the courage to refer to central bank staff as perfect in terms of staff in the country. These are individuals who are managing the monetary policy of our country. William talked about that earlier, but it's my turn to push you on it. They make the decision to go into accounts that are not theirs. I'm talking about the international community accounts. And they took money from those accounts without the authorizations of those institutions. The institution were shocked to the point that they have to write letters, a joint letter to the government, say, hey, you took our money, put our money back. These are the people you say they are the best, they are perfect, and you want me to believe that? Why?
Anthony, I also followed that report. I read the communication you are talking about. Put our money back.
Right.
I read all of that. Now, what was this used for? Was it used for central bank's internal financing to pay its staff, to do other things that the bank had to do? No. That which happened because, for example, the central government maybe was stranded. And government revenue may not be raised at a particular point in time, but over a period of time.
Right.
So that's how I think.
Okay.
In anticipation of government revenue meeting its target over a period of time, the government could say, okay, since this is already available, let us see if we can use it and replace it over time. Maybe government's own time was far longer than the time the donor community wanted its money.
You can't even say that. You're trying to laugh a little bit.
I'm coming. If the government will take this money because we expect our envelope to be available at this time. If our envelope is available, we'll replace it. For me, that's you know what we say in Liberia. I can do this in the meantime, and when I get my money, I can replace it. So it also goes for even the government of Liberia. It goes from individuals to government. So government use that money to replace it. Maybe at the time the donors wanted their money, government was not prepared to pay it.
Mr. Red, the point is at least notify them. Don't forget that part. At least notify them. The point is at least notify these individuals or the international, because they are your partner. If you tell them the situation, hey, we need money now to spend that we don't have, we will get it in the future. So can you give us this money? But to go in their accounts, central bank going in other people's account and taking money without the authorization, Liberia is over. So you were right to say that if the central bank is not credible, then there is no credible institution. You are right, I agree with you. And the central bank is not credible because they store from those people's account without telling them, and that's how I reached the conclusion. What do you say?
No. The central bank remains the most credible entity in our country. I keep saying it. The reason why I keep saying this is if that is, all of us read those reports, we read all of those reports. Yes, the most prudent thing to have done at that time was perhaps to inform donors that this is happening or it is about to happening. But that money was under the Central Bank of Liberia. So the government of Liberia interacted with the Central Bank of Liberia. I don't think that the government and the Central Bank, they were actually, like how we say, pilfering. They were pilfering other people's money. No, that was not the intention. I don't think so.
That was the case,
especially at the level of the Central Bank.
Those people would not
especially
have written that letter.
Yes. Then the point, Anthony, the point I keep making is the time lag. Central Bank, do this lending to us for 3 weeks. We'll bring your money back. But before the 3 weeks, if the donors had known, or if we had interacted with the donors, that this is available for you, but we are using some portion of it and we'll put it back. We will put it back at this point in time. Then it would have been very much easier. Very much easier. There will be no problem with it. But that did not happen. So because it did not happen, you can't say the central bank is not credible.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, focus on Liberia. We are into some very juicy topic. Like my my host would say, Anthony would say, it's getting very juicy. It's getting very heated here on this show. And we're talking about Central Bank of Liberia and their performance. And so we are deep in the throes with this. And I think there was a little something that's juking Anthony or rubbing him the wrong way with what took place with that NGO money. And the main thing that our panelists and what we're trying to convey out there is that um, as Liberians, as Liberian people, one of the most important and critical entity that you can have is the Central Bank of Liberia. And for some reason, when the farmer left town, he put the fox and said, Mr. Fox, please take care of all the chicken and make sure that they're fine in there. And so the fox said, yes, I will. And when the farmer came back and he saw that his chickens were missing, he realized what happened. The fox said, well, I was hungry. I was hoping that they were going to hatch some more eggs before you got back so that you can have a replenishment of your chicken here. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a joking matter. The fact is that um, money and the level at which maybe our government made a faux pas, they made a mistake. So where do we go forward? How do we clean up this stuff? Now, let's not talk about the treasury bill. We understand that for the past 5 months, I will give central bank some credit. They have managed to keep a stable exchange rate. It's been a little bit stable. Now, I don't know how much is that is because of what happening with the COVID-19 and everything else in the world, but at least central bank has kept that rate stable. So going forward, what are some of the things that Central Bank of Liberia, what are they doing now to restore consumer confidence? Have they learned from the lesson? Have the government of Liberia learned that you cannot do that? Because if you do that, there's severe consequences. Thoughts?
Yeah, to say that they wouldn't have consequences is not true. And I know, given the level of alarm from the international community, from citizens, and even from people in the sub-region. Like when I was in Ghana, my friend asked me when I was going to visit Monrovia, he said, oh, you're going for your share of the 16 billion? You know, everybody knows about it. I am sure that everybody has it becomes a learning curve for the government of Liberia and the Central Bank of Liberia that there should not be a repeat of this. Obviously, there shouldn't be a repeat of this because it did not represent us well. It did not represent us well. That's why, for me, I'm sure that the Central Bank of Liberia will not go into it. But in terms of the bank doing what it's supposed to do going forward, the bank has so many things to think about. The bank is up to it. For example, the bank has to meet the expectations of the Liberian people, and it must be planning for tomorrow, especially in the times in which we find ourselves, to ensure that it does not happen. For example,
Well,
this
Thomas,
is the
before
issue
you
of
say those
digitizing.
examples, before you go there, remember the central bank has been trying to pull itself back from the political space. It has been trying to pull itself back out of there. And so, before you give those examples, something that's very important you need to share with me. What do you think that verdict that comes out will that pull the central bank a little bit more away from the political arena, or will it pull them further in depending on the verdict? Will a guilty verdict put them out of the political arena, or will a not guilty verdict put them more into the political throes?
Well, with respect to with respect to I didn't get you clear.
Okay, let me say this. I'm saying that with the decision that is pending on the verdict, do you think a guilty verdict or a not guilty verdict will move central bank out of the political space a little bit and put them back where they like to operate, or do you think it's going to make them to suck them into a bigger political battle? Because that verdict,
The
we
central bank should whatever it is, the central bank should always do its best to be out of politics, to be out of the public view negatively. That's what it is. The central bank has a moral responsibility never to be viewed negatively by the public or the rest of the country, even people outside our country. So whatever the verdict is, or what it will be, the central bank should do its best to ensure that its relationship with politicians is minimized. Follow the book. Follow the book.
And
This
Follow
is
the,
our mandate, and it's going to happen because if
wait,
you
pause.
excuse me, Tom, if you follow the book, if you follow the CBI Act, and the politicians say, okay, we're going to get rid of you. You know how many central bank governors will be fired until the government itself will take the blame from the Liberian people?
Mr.
What is
Red,
most important is do what is necessary, do what the book says, and leave the politicians. For me, the politicians are easy to deal with. We keep talking to them. If you, we're going to put them on record. Put them on record.
Mr.
Write whosoever it is. This is the act. And because it's what the act says, we are following it. But we can accommodate a conversation. There should be a conversation because we are partners. After all, we are partners. We're not enemies. We are not independent of one another. That partnership requires discussion. And at the end of the discussion, we may not agree totally what the politicians say, but there could be a win-win situation for both parties.
Mr. Red,
Answering.
as experts, and technicians in the central bank, talking about the central bank staff, you said something here that I'm going to use for this segment. Go by
Go
the
ahead,
book.
please.
Go by the book. Go by the book. I am a man with no knowledge of economics except how I manage mine in my house. If we should go by the book, which I agree we should 100% do, then the central bank staff you classify as being perfect are far from perfection. And there are multiple of things that rob them of that perfection. You try to impress on us, that should be one of their description. Number one, going by the book. In order for the central bank to print money, it must get authorization from the national legislature. That is a violation that the Central Bank of Liberia is guilty of. Yet, you said that bank is perfect. Central Bank, you will managing other people's money. You will managing the other banks. You manage accounts. You should not be taking money from people's account without their authorization. Central Bank is also guilty of that. And then in terms of employing qualified individuals, the Central Bank of Liberia, I don't know, succumb to political pressure, something you talk about here, for which you said that we will go by the books. If it means we'll be fired, let us be fired. Why couldn't the central bank go by the book by saying no to the politician that no, we're not taking money from no people's accounts. If you want us to do, tell them. If they agree, then we can do so. Central bank did not go by that book. Central bank went and hired, it was reported, so many people. So when the IMF came in to help the central banks, the IMF told them all these people have to go. Is the central bank really going by the books here?
Yeah,
Yeah, Mr. Ray, I read a few issues on which the central bank not going by the book. Please address
answering.
those. Yeah, your turn. Go ahead.
Yes,
Mhm.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you what you said. But I will keep saying that the central bank remains a place of integrity. That's why it is a central bank, because of the level of integrity. When people are appointed to some positions, they go with some excitement, some euphoria, and they fail to look at the record. They fail to look at what they should. They fail to even look at their own term of reference. They fail to look at their own term of reference. I will think, I will think, and I keep saying it. The central bank remains our best. While if politicians make appointments and those appointments, maybe those who are appointed, they don't follow the books, you don't hold the central bank as you don't hold the central bank responsible. That's why you see when people go wrong, we should learn to hold them rather than the entity they work for. Because if we keep holding individuals, that becomes a problem. If we keep holding the entities, The entities are there. They remain. But our attitude is what is causing that problem. So the Central Bank of Liberia is doing its best. Now, put the people money
Mr.
back.
Rare,
It
to
was wrong.
interject here, is the
Up to this
central
point, we
bank
don't hear
as an
it again. So
institution?
I would
Hold on.
think that even though it has some consequences, the central bank put the money back. The government of Liberia replaced the money. So our donors are not talking anything about it. In terms of in
Yeah, I was just about to interject that it is the central bank as an institution that is not holding its own employees accountable, whether or not they are the leaders or not. When they do things wrong, when they don't go by the book. In the case of the printing of money, the central bank did not go by the book. Maybe there are other individuals. I think the governors there, they have to vote, or the board members there have to vote in order to come up with that resolution that we should print money. So this is a central bank that dropped the ball, and they couldn't hold anybody responsible and say, "Well, we did it. It's okay." Is that why you're telling us?
No, no. The central bank did not do is the central bank did not do did not do something wrong. Because if you look at what the legislature said,
Mhm.
and in fact, if you look at what the legislature said, that's the reason why, for example, the 16 billion is out of court. That's the reason why everybody is out. Because I keep saying it. If we don't look at the record and we become emotional on some of the things we do, on some of the things we hear, then it becomes a problem. And it is that emotional judgment that led us to court. But of it is the decision of the court that got us out. All I'm saying is it was too hasty for some of the decisions that were taken. People went to the central bank with the intention of doing their best. Yes, other people were employed. They kept employing. Yes, but it was euphoria. A new government came in, so everybody decided to do something new. Now we have all gone back to basics. What happened? I am not sure it's going to happen again because the euphoria is over. Everybody is busy at work, and we know that you must follow what the book says. Everybody knows it. If you don't follow what the book says personally, and that's what I said, Dennis, answering personally. If you do what is wrong, you pay the price for it, so that it serves as as a deterrent. All those coming after you will look ahead to do what is right. Central bank is there. The individuals are there. The personnel is there. They are all doing their best. But we shouldn't forget, and I keep saying it, Anthony, in the history of the central bank, it has never paid for anybody's money, any entity's money, any donor's money. It has never happened. So why is it happening at this time? And you still hold the central bank responsible? It is not the central bank.
All right. All right, Mr. Rare. Again, folks in cyberspace, this is Focus on Liberia. You are watching FOL Marketplace, a business and economic forum here at Focus on Liberia. I'm Anthony C, hosting with my partner here, Willen Bernard King, and we are talking the Central Bank of Liberia. We're trying to look at the bank's performance and rating it maybe okay or not too okay. Mr. Rare, our guest here, is saying the central bank is perfect. It's a credible institution. But we look at some decision the central bank has made. I'm not buying that. I don't think William is buying that either. Hey, he worked in there. Is he biased here because he worked there? He's not willing to put his friends under the boss. Or is he just giving an expert opinion? Maybe he is. We are not there, so maybe we are suspicious. Folks in cyberspace will read some comments here quickly. And let me also let you know our phone lines are open. Load on the screen. You see that number there in red, followed by that call? Give us a call. We will take that phone call from you, and maybe you can talk to our guest here. Let me read some comment quickly here, William, and that give Mr. Ware a break because it seems to be the conversation. He might be sweating right there. Two men on one man. Let me read. Musu writes, the CBL is operating subpar, way below the standards of its counterpart within the region. She writes again, this guy should be the PR director for CBL. You got a job recommendation, Mr. Red. Keep on the good job, she say. Musu again, it was not a mistake. It was intentional. That was talking about the central bank going into donors' account and taking money. She said that was not a mistake. That was intentional. And I agree with Musu on that one. Somebody here with the name Logan, a Manson Logan, how I'm pronouncing that right. If they are perfect, Lord, don't let me see the inadequate ones. Mr. Red said the central bank officials are perfect. So she said, oh my God, with all the noise coming from the central bank, if those people are perfect, I don't want to see the imperfect one, because if I see the imperfect one, Liberia is done. I'm just trying to put context around that. And then Musu again, this guy is completely rhetorical. Everything he's saying is fantasy and strictly from the economic book. You are preaching book economics here, Musu is telling us. So those are a few comments there. Mr. King.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, good. I thought I was on mute here. So, Thomas, one of the things I want to say is, we got to look at this and, man, like in Liberia, to say, oh, I made a mistake and I made a mistake. And so the central bank definitely ran into some serious quagmires by bending or folding to the demands of our government. Now, we're not blaming only the central bank, or we're not only holding the central bank responsible, because the topic focus on Liberia marketplace, we're looking at the central bank. But on some of our other shows, we've talked about some of the decisions from the other different institutions and how they have impacted things as well in Liberia. So what I want to focus on is that for the past 5 months, like you mentioned, that Treasury bill, 30% return on your money if you put it in there. So far right now, up to this point, month number 5, month number 6 is not a bad deal. Up to this point is not a bad deal. We still have some more months to go in the year. We have about 7 more months to go, and let's see if they can stabilize this currency. If they stabilize the currency, you're going to have a lot of happy people saying that, oh, it's a good deal that I made by buying the Treasury bill. So I think that that's something that we are critical of central bank, but that's something that is moving. On another topic, what I want to ask you, Thomas, is when are we going to have more major Liberian financial institutions? Now, we have a lot of credit unions. We have over 100 credit unions, and we have over 20 insurance companies. Now, that's another role for the central bank, is to regulate and monitor the insurance companies and also the credit unions and so forth. Now, interestingly enough, within the insurance world, why is it that these insurance companies, they're underfunded, they're undercapitalized, and yet they still remain open?
That's a real concern.
Now, that they're not cracking the whip, and it's been underneath the radar right now temporarily. So let's see if they crack the whip. Go ahead, Andrew.
Mr. Yeah, that's Willen, you guys hold it right there. Let me bring in a caller.
Okay,
Let me bring in this caller quickly. Bear with me here. We have a caller. Let's see here if I bring that caller in quickly.
Hello.
Yes. Quickly to the issue. Caller, your name and where you joining us from?
Well, my name is Josiah F. Jokai Jr. I'm joining you from Danbury, Connecticut.
Oh, welcome to Focus on Liberia. We are looking into the Central Bank of Liberia, trying to rate its performance. Your thoughts?
Firstly, I would like to say thanks to Ray for taking up the opportunity to come and share his perspective. I'm glad that he indicated that the opinions expressed are exclusively his and not the central bank, because I'm not sure the central bank will have responded to many of your critical questions that Liberians are trying to find answers to the way he did. Firstly, I'd like to say that his claim that the central bank is perfect is not true, because the central bank, like many public institutions in Liberia currently are having many issues that range from structural to capacity issues. There are limitation issues, and the central bank, that is one of those. Other integrated institutions, which is a major concern. You can have public institutions having structural and institutional capacity issues, but not institutions that are supposed to be independent of institutions like the central bank managing the fiscal activities of the country, along with the Ministry of Finance. So I like to disagree respectfully with Ray on that. The second thing is that the funds, the development funds that the government took from partners' accounts, let me say this, with my experience working in some of those agencies like the Ministry of Education, the National Elections Commission, let me say that partner funds are not loose. They are not exclusively managed by the respective government agencies. They are funds that are put in special accounts with specific objectives under joint agreements with that agency of government and the partner in question. So not even the partner in question or that agency, such as the central bank, can take any funds, can release any funds from that account without an agreement to shift the focus of the fund, because it is a programmatic arrangement project. It's not just money sitting. It is a program that both institutions commit to. So before any funds are released, you have to contact the other partner. But if you go in the absence of the other partner, like the case of the central bank, because you have the authority managing their accounts, and you're supposed to refer to the partner, and you go in their absence without their acquiescence and release or withdraw any funds from there outside of the agreement is unacceptable. It is totally wrong. So there is no way we can meander, we can filibuster. The only thing we have to say is that it was wrong for the central bank to do that. So the thing I would like to hear we're saying is that the central bank might be taking steps to deal with some of the many issues that it has in the aftermath of the 16 billion and the 25 million mop-up fund saga. Because the reports are clear, like Anthony said from the outset, it's not something debatable. The reports are clear about how the funds were misapplied, how they were misdirected. And if they have to fix that, as recommended in those reports by the very government agencies and some of our international partners who sponsor the investigation, you have to make sure you address the capacity issues. You have to make sure that you bring reforms to those institutions, like the very central bank. It needs reforms about how it disburses funds, about how it conducts its auctions, about how it deals with the commercial banks, about how it relates to the Ministry of Finance, because there should be a missing link there in terms of the roles of the two agencies. The Ministry of Finance was reporting on the 25 million, and the central bank had its own side of the story. So you need serious coordination. So there are capacity issues, there are overlapping issues, and these issues have to be addressed. So we need to face the fight. If we should fix the financial situation of our country, we should put in place an effective fiscal management regime. I'm not a specialist in the area, but it's common sense to know that there are serious issues with the sector. So I just thought to call, to chip in a little bit as far as the discussion is concerned.
Mr. Caller, before you go, one thing I have to ask you. Going forward, give me one thing in 1 minute. Give me one thing that you think the central bank can do to move forward. Give me one thing.
Very good. And that one thing is for the executive to allow the central bank to function independently so that it is able to garner the confidence that it needs to put in place all of the policies required to give Liberia an effective financial management regime. As it stands, there is there's a considerable level of interference from the executive. And even the central bank will not doubt that. But for job security and for some reason, a lot of people will not want to delve into that conversation. That's one thing I will ask of the executive. And the reason is that you have an economic management team of the country, that includes the central bank, the Ministry of Finance and other relevant agencies. If the economic management team is giving the leverage to be able to perform consistent, with its terms of reference, I think we can see a very good financial management regime. The guys who run those entities, they are not bad, but what makes them bad is the commitment to the executive. I'm sorry, it's the commitment to the executive that makes them look bad because they have to do the things as dictated by the executive. So that one thing I want done is for the executive to allow the Central Bank of Liberia, the Ministry of Finance, and those agencies in the economic management team to be able to perform their duties in keeping with their TOR with a considerable level of independence.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for calling in here. Focus on Liberia. William, we got one more caller, and then we'll come to Mr. Ware. Mr. Ware, let's take this one from the man Joe Moyu. Joe, quickly, we got 2 Joes today. That's good. Maybe Joe Biden is running, that's why. Joe.
So, yeah, there's Joe Moyu. The question I have for Mr. Ware, I assume that since it's the central bank that they have monitoring functions to monitor, not only monitoring, but monitor and regulate the banks in Liberia. I'm asking that because Liberia is saturated with foreign banks. I think I heard some number like 95% of the banks in Liberia are owned by foreigners, mostly Nigerians and other Africans. What sort of monitoring or regulatory system do they have in place? There are some customers are complaining that money is being taken from their accounts without their permission. We heard the situation with Mr. Salif, who lost something like $700,000. I had a friend of mine who $20,000 was missing from his account. So what do they have in place to stop these bad actors from operating almost like in a frontier situation? That the banks just come in, I don't know if they bribe their way in or whatever. But yes, what sort of regulatory functions the central bank has, and what sort of monitoring that they do to ensure that customer funds are secure? That's basically my question. Are you there?
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Red will get to that question. And Mr. Red, this is what I want to talk about, and we almost to the end of the broadcast here. But this thing about independence that Josiah raised, and we've heard it so many times. And as a guy with a little more of political eye, I don't see independence here. So tell me, from your expert opinion, what is the independence you guys talking about? I don't see it at all.
Well, thank you, Anthony. What is written as the law should remain inviolate. But if somebody comes out to violate the law, then they need a reminder. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So many views were expressed. When it comes to the Central Bank Act of 1999, that's a key element in the act, that the central bank is an autonomous agency of the government of Liberia. And its autonomy covers so many things. Its personnel, so many things. In fact, its decision making. And that is absolutely what the bank is all about. And like Josiah said, we have these instances because all those at the bank are political appointees. They must sometimes play to the drum that is sounding. And let's face the reality. That's why I keep saying that if we follow the books, it remains good for all of us. It becomes a win-win situation. And if we decide to follow the book, let's follow the book. If our politicians come and they decide that this should be done, we show them the art, we have a conversation with them, and we tell them this is what these are the consequences if this thing happens. Like the money we're all talking about, these are the consequences that are going to happen. So the central bank is not only it's written, but it is for us to put it into practice. And at the level of the central bank is independent. It does its job well. Take politicians out of the central bank, we have a very good place. We have a very good bank. Our problem in that country has always been the maneuvering of our politicians. If no politician had gone to the central bank and say, let's do this, it will not be done. That's why I keep saying, when it comes to integrity, the central bank is outstanding. Let me talk about our sister Musu. Musu said, I'm being rhetorical. I'm not being rhetorical. I'm being practical on what I know, on what I see. The central bank remains, for example, one of our best places. And I must say it as it is, not only as it is written, but as the attitude of the personnel at the bank. For my brother I said, Josiah, let us continue the conversation as we keep talking about the loopholes, the challenges, and the missteps at the Central Bank of Liberia. Yes, indeed, they are there. There are certain things, some of the things go wrong, but it doesn't mean we should stop the conversation. No, the conversation doesn't stop. As a result of the conversation, we're going to get there.
All right.
Answering?
All right.
Like Monyu, let's say, excuse me, Monyu, our
ahead.
brother Monyu. Monyu, yes, that is true. The LBDI is the only indigenous bank that we have in the country. But all of the banks that exist, they met the basic requirement for their existence. They met their basic requirement for their certification. That's how they exist in our country. That's how they exist in the economy. Now, in terms of what they do in-house, the central bank does not micromanage. Say, every day, why do you tell us? Every day, why do you tell us? So it's the responsibility of the individual leaderships of the various banks to ensure that their personnel is doing what is right. It's to ensure that the employees are doing what is right. So if an employee of a commercial bank goes wrong, it is a report that goes to the central bank that the bank acts on. But if a report does not go there, the bank does not act on the report. So let's assume that what happened to Mr. Salif, a report has been made from Access Bank to the Central Bank of Liberia. Then we wait for the central bank's verdict. We want to see what the verdict from the central bank is going to be when bank employees are going into other people's account.
All right.
I guess it's
Yeah. So let me read this one, Mr. Ray. You got some help here. It's from Dukle Faliku. Faliku writes, I think CBA is not the problem. Most of the problems rest on the shoulder of the stakeholders. Policymakers have huge influence on the day-to-day operation of the Central Bank of Liberia. The CBL decision should be free from political influence in order to operate freely to have better economic outcome for the Liberian people. He continues, it is okay to have coordination between the two parties. Finance Ministry through the government should be able to set monetary policy goals and the CBL to achieve her goal through price stability and moderate long-term interest rate. So that person is more like agreeing with Mr. Ray here that, hey, the central bank so far they're doing okay. I don't see it like that, but hey, what do I know about banking? Mr. Ray knows, but the noise that coming from there, there's this saying that when there is smoke, there is fire. And so I believe that the fact that smoke coming from there, William will agree with me. Fire must be burning somewhere. Folks, we are almost at the end. Let me turn it over to my man, Bernard King, for his final thoughts here quickly.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I want to thank our guests and all our listeners as we talk about the central bank and the performance in a very practical way. We hope that we accomplish our goal to educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. This was our purpose, was to start the conversation about a very important entity in our great nation of Liberia. My closing remarks is that this is the midterm. The midterm, central bank came to register late for the school. They started late. They were the last person in the classroom, and they had to get going. And there were some decisions that were made that they've seen or they caught themselves in, and now they still have time. They still have the second half of the semester or the term to clean up a lot of acts. So we look forward to the work that they do, and we hope that they turn things around. In closing, I know that it's a very challenging environment to work in. And for those at central bank who are listening, or to the government of Liberia, if you're listening and everything, the only thing I will say is to kind of help and be a better teammate. One of the things is please look to enable the use of technology for a lot of the banking transactions. We as Liberia, we're too cash heavy in handling a lot of transactions, and that causes a lot of bottleneck. So, in closing, thank everyone. I think our performance for Central Bank right now is a C minus. And I think they can do better. I know they're not just buying off themselves, but still, you can do better. So a C minus. Thank you, Anthony.
All right, let's come to Mr. Ure for his final thoughts on this rating of the Central Bank of Liberia. I know he threw some description around perfect, credible, but let him conclude, Mr. Ure.
I was going to give them a
Thank
F,
you, gentlemen.
but Thomas, you did a
And
good
it was,
job.
in fact, I just received a text from one of my bosses,
Okay.
and I want to tell him that I remain loyal to my country. And what I say,
Thomas, you trying to go back over there for work? Is that what it is?
what I say, is informed by my own experience.
Okay.
What I say is informed by my own experience. The economy may not be performing. The economy is not doing well in terms of what is happening globally and domestically. COVID-19 is on us, and we have our own constraints. These all of these translate into some of the difficulties that are being faced by the Central Bank of Liberia. Now, let me come to you, gentlemen, and our viewers around the world. The Central Bank is a human entity, and it cannot be perfect. My choice of the word perfection was intended to describe the level of integrity at the Central Bank of Liberia. Exceeded, for example, the expectation of everybody who is listening. Then I will say the Central Bank is doing well. It may not be it may not be perfect, but it is close. It is closer. It is doing its best. That one of the key challenges of the Central Bank is the involvement of politicians. And let's withdraw politicians. We have a better Central Bank. In closing, I want to say to all those who are listening, the two Joes, Josiah, Monju, and Musu, our sister Musu, the conversation has started. Let's build on this conversation. And as a result of this conversation, I am convinced and I know that policymakers somewhere will hear what we are saying. We are not just talking, they are listening to us. And the more we say these things, they will do their best. In terms of lesson learned, I know totally from what Josiah said, the central bank will not tread that path again. The central bank will not tread that path again because it is a dent on its own integrity and public image. So, for all those who are listening, their views are presented were not just rhetorical, but they were a result of years of experience at the central bank. I want to thank all of you, especially focused on Liberia. I didn't know that the discussion would have gone this way, and I pray again that I will receive another invitation to discuss the bank.
Mr.
or
Ray,
any other matter that has to do with our country.
I will be more than willing. Focus on Liberia will be more than willing to invite you, based off your training and also based on your experience. Having worked at a bank and also at other banks in the sub region, we will always count on you when we have anything to discuss about the central bank, and it is important that we have the conversation. I am glad that if there were a debate, I will be leaving this stage as the winner of the debate, because at the end you said the central bank is not perfect, even though that
It's an
was
evil
your
institution.
your initial was. Hey, that is why we have a conversation. We disagree to agree, and then we make progress. On that note, folks, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Mr. William Bernard King. Thank you, Mr. Thomas Red. Thank you to our listeners. This is Focus on Liberia. This is what we do. We educate, we elevate, and we promote all things Liberia. Today, hey, hear me well, today at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, that is my show. I'm the political guy. We are having a political debate. You don't want to miss it. We have four outstanding guys. They all disagree on the issue. And I will be in the middle, will be throwing some punches on the issue, not at anybody. You don't want to miss it. 7 p.m. Eastern Time, a political debate on Focus on Liberia. Live. The only platform that hosts a debate, because we know how to do it. The veteran Dennis will be there, and I will be there, and you don't want to miss it. On that note, I want to say thank you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel always, and like our Facebook page, so when we are live, you will get that notification. That virus called Corona is still around the corner. Don't forget. Don't say because I enjoyed the show with Mr. Thomas Ray and William Bernard King, Corona is no more. No, that virus is right there. Thank you, and God bless you. And remember, we are all Liberians, and that's the song we are leaving you with. Bye-bye.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our Liberian people.
Look, we got